Yeah, family. Y'all see what we doing and y'all see who we have in the house. Got my brother C-Gutta.
Yeah, what's up?
We got our elder teacher, master teacher,
Yeah.
Baba Kaba Hiawatha Kamane. How you pronounce your last name?
Kamane.
Kamane.
Just call me Brother Kaba.
Brother Kaba. That's right. I'll call you Baba Kaba. You
There
the
we go.
elder.
I got you.
You earned that.
Okay.
You earned that. I tell people it's the difference between the elders and the elderly.
That's right.
Some people just older fools.
Yeah, that's it. There ain't nothing worse than a young fool than a
Exactly,
old fool.
than an old fool. Old fool. You know, but your name was once Hiawatha also, right?
No, well, that's my middle name now. When I corrected my name, Kaba Hiawatha Kamane.
Okay. What does Hiawatha mean?
Hiawatha was an indigenous brother from the Mohawk Nation in northern New York. He was known as the Dreamer.
Okay.
1000 AD now. 500 years before Cristobal Colon.
Right.
And he came upon, and you know, when I visit street organizations, I usually tell this story about the Haudenosaunee, who are misnomer the Iroquois. Okay, we call them the Iroquois. And they lived, their nations were southern Canada, northern New York. Now, when the United States and Canada split it, they split families.
Right.
But who could? They didn't care. But it spans across almost into the middle part of America, like near Minnesota. And Hiawatha belonged, they said, to the Mohawk Nation, because there's 5 nations. There's the Mohawk, Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, and the Seneca.
Is Oneida one?
Huh?
Is Oneida one?
Oneida is one of the nations, yeah.
So
Yes.
that's all because
so
it's
it's
like
like
jails, right?
All those prisons are.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
That's a
yeah.
fact.
Exactly.
Every last one of them was in prison.
Exactly.
That's what you
Or
name
town.
the nations.
Or a town.
Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Seneca, and Cayuga. There are 5 nations. And he belonged to the Mohawk Nation. He was known as the Dreamer. He came down in 1000 AD and he told the other, because they were at war with each other. Now, I mean, they were bloodletting each other, killing each other, doing all sorts of things. And in 1000 AD, Hiawatha came down and told him, and said, look, I can see that one day we're going to have to be united because this ain't going to work like this. So what they did is that they went to the Onondaga territory, which is in the middle of the 5 nations. And they had a meeting and they said, look, we have to stop killing each other. So what they did is they took the families that had lost the most, you know, like families that had lost mother, father, sons, brothers, you know, people that had a stake in this. And so what he did is that he went and he went and picked up a bush, a big bush, and there was a hole where the bush was. And he told all of the families, he said, put your hatchet in the hole. Put it, and then he put the bush back over it. He said, now you'll fight no more. That's where we get the concept to bury the hatchet. Okay?
As soon as you said it, that's the first thing
Yeah.
that came to my mind.
Exactly. See, when you explain it, you can understand it. Because what they swore to is that they would never again
War with each other.
needless war. So they united. And then they called themselves the Haudenosaunee. And they created a document that supported that agreement, and they call it the Gaia Nerekawa. And when they called it that, that means the Great Law of Peace. The Gaia Nerekawa is what the U.S. Constitution is based on. Because in 1744, there was a brother named Conestoga, and he went to Philadelphia to talk to Ben Franklin and George Washington, all these so-called forefathers. He said, look, man, y'all are not together. You're 13 sovereign states. You don't agree with each other. If we make a deal, if the Lenape make a deal in New Jersey, Delaware don't respect it. They don't know what's going on. New Jersey don't know what New York is doing. And they said, you all have to somehow organize yourself so that you all are on the same page, even though you're sovereign. Just like the 5 nations were sovereign, but they were related. So they said, well, like, how are we going to do that? Because we come from Europe. We're a land of kings and queens. We don't know nothing about coming together as a sovereign. So he said, well, you need to do what we did. And what we did was that we united the 5 nations. And out of the 5 nations, according to the population, they had what's called sachems. And every so often, these sachems would come to the Onondaga territory and discuss mutual needs. And they would share. And then out of those, because like the Onondaga was the largest, so they had the most sachems. And then you had Mohawk had some. And then you had the Oneida had some. But according to how many people you had in your nation, determined how many sachems you had. But when you got the group of sachems together, they elected one from each of their nations. So, and they call that the Great Council. That was 5. They had 5 on the Great Council.
Sachems is basically senators.
Sachems are the representatives. The Great Council is the senators.
Okay.
Where everyone has one. No matter how many people you have, you only have one. The representatives, because of the nature,
based on the population.
Based on the population. That's where the Senate came from, and that's where the House of Representatives came from. And when they came back and showed, when the so-called forefathers showed their document to the Native American, the Native American said, "Y'all must be crazy. How? You're talking about a democracy. You're talking about freedom. Because democracy, demokratia, it means people power. Republika, Republicans, means for the people. But you ain't doing nothing for the people because, first of all, you ain't going nowhere if your women are second-class citizens.
Right.
Any nation that does not see equality in a woman, you ain't going no place because you only working half strength." And then he said, "Now let's talk about what you're doing to the black folk up in here. You talking about a democracy, this will never work." They said, "Well, we're going to go with it anyway." So what has happened in the government and the Constitution is that they developed, in order to right all the wrongs that the Native Americans told them they were going to do. Now that's why you have amendments, because that's what amendments mean. Amendments mean we made a mistake and now we're going to amend the mistake.
Right.
So when you have amendments, you already are admitting that your document is flawed. Constitution is flawed. Everybody talking about, that they need to apply the Constitution. No, you need to get rid of that Constitution, because when that Constitution was written, black folk and women, Native Americans, were enslaved or enchained without rights. I ain't going with that. You see, the same thing with the national anthem. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, now everybody talking about our brother Colin took a knee, okay? And you shouldn't take a knee when you sing the Star Spangled Banner, okay? Here's my take. I don't even want to sing it. I don't want to sing the national anthem. Well, you got to get a new document because Francis Scott Key enslaved Africans.
Right.
And he was sitting up drunk in a bar listening to people singing a European song, which is like a social club song, like a gang song.
Right.
And he was singing, and they were listening to this, and he was listening to the melody of the song. And you can check this on Google. The song's melody is dan da dan 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 dan. You can see them cheering the beer
When drunk white people
That's right.
Yeah.
And he was watching them sing
that.
that.
All day. Yeah, especially Irish. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he was watching what was going on, and what happened, and this happened during the War of 1812. And what happened, fam, is that
I think the British had a black Marine.
They had a contingent because the British promised black folk freedom.
Yeah, and they was wearing them out.
And them brothers, for their freedom, and the sisters were dynamite. They was just tearing them apart. So what he did is he wrote the first 2 stanzas, and then the 3rd stanza started getting on black folk.
Yeah.
And then the 4th stanza started getting on the Native Americans that had done the same thing. I don't want to sing that song.
Yeah, I encourage people not to sing that also.
Do you know for the song, Lift Every Voice and Sing? That was another contender for the national anthem.
James Weldon Johnson.
That's it, the Brothers Johnson.
Yeah. Wow, right? and I love the last stanza of our anthem. Shadow beneath thy hand.
Yeah, man.
May we forever stand.
Yes.
True to our God, true to our native land.
That is it, brother.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah.
And that first started as a poem.
Right.
But then it became a song. And then it became an anthem. In fact, I visited the church down in Florida where it was first introduced.
Okay.
And this was back in the day. And so this is why, we just have to know our history.
Right.
We have to know. That's why Malcolm said that of all the subjects that we could study, history is probably the one that can best help us right now. Because when you know where you came from, you then know where you are. When you know where you are, then you can know where you're going.
That's right.
But how can you know where you're going if you ain't know where you've been?
Or even where you at.
That's it. And one leads to the other.
Yeah.
Nah, because it's a lot of our people that like the system, like they just want to be with Negro pants.
Yeah. Just indoctrinated.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
and like I can't be one to sit here and talk about but because I still have certain tendencies to do European shit. You know what I mean? 'Cause this shit been it been imprinted on our DNA. So I understand that, but you have people that don't want to know.
You know what I say though? Sometimes our people, it's scary because a lot of people don't know where to start. Because it's like you gotta unlearn everything you've been taught. So you gotta throw mama's teachings out, grandma's teachings, the people you love the most, who really did the best they could for you. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to denounce everything that they thought was right and true.
But they didn't know. See, when you get an understanding,
right?
It's like I said, I'm kind of privileged in a degree is
because you was raised with this knowledge.
Yeah, like I told him before, I used to have to my moms would make me write something on the black things. Remember those posters that was out? I would have to write that Hannibal, Mansa Musa, Sunday Otto. I would have to do that. So it was kind of impressive. But at the same time, I still was trying to be a part of broader society.
Right. Well, I think
you know it, but you still fighting to be a part of that. So now, like I had, like when you have conversations with dudes, and the dude would be like, "Yo, but look what happened to this dude. Look what happened. They gonna kill you." Boo, 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 boo. I'm like, "Yo, bro, you're gonna die anyway."
Right.
People be literally scared.
Yeah.
There's certain people scared to, make money.
Yeah.
People be scared to learn more because now you're responsible. If I don't got no responsibility,
right,
I can do what I want.
The psychosis of slavery, of having a slave mentality, and sometimes, from what I see, with a lot of our people, in the conscious circle and outside the conscious circle, we don't have that balance. Like you said, you grew up with the knowledge, but you still was outside with the kids who didn't. I think if we really knew who we were, it's almost like you either got to be an extremist or you got to be a sellout on the spectrum of things. People don't realize that we can come to some medium and just be, instead of trying to force ourselves to be who we think we are or who we may not be. I hear, like you just gave us a history of the indigenous people. Many of our people say, "Oh, we not African. We've been here. We actually Americans. We the indigenous people." Partly right, but we can't denounce Africa.
Yeah, we the first Americans, but
same for our African brothers and sisters. We can't denounce our indigenous heritage. So where do we come together? Even with, because of course I'm always black first. I'm always B1. But I won't exclude our Caribbean brothers and sisters or our continental brothers and sisters. But it's like this day and age, everything is so extreme that it has to be a divide. And I think this is part of the cracks in our armor as a community, because if a person celebrates something outside of what we support, we call them a sellout. If somebody don't know something in our scope of awareness, we call them ignorant or stupid. You're a coon, and we're all learning. We're all on our journey.
But this is one thing I learned from reading European histories. They were doing the same thing, bro.
Yeah.
They were doing the same thing for hundreds of years,
thousands
of years.
And that's my point.
Actually, so now, but that's because like I said, that been pushing our DNA. So
Right.
you gotta really. It's a process, bro.
Well, that's the
That's just like
OG Wisdom
that's just,
podcast.
yeah. That's just like
we gonna purge.
yeah.
that.
That's just like but we still going through a process.
Definitely.
You feel me?
And that's
because
why we got the elders.
you got to
as the
think about
teacher.
it.
But hey, man, let's be honest. I'm going through it too.
Right.
We're all going through it.
Exactly.
We are sitting in the middle of hell,
Exactly.
trying to act angelic.
Exactly. Yeah.
That even an angel has to act devilish in hell. That's why you're there.
Yeah.
But never get so deep that even when you get back into heaven, you bring that devilishness with you up there.
That's a fact.
Don't get in too deep, but get in deep enough that you can do what you have to. That's what our ancestors did on the plantation. They clearly understood the system. They had done their analysis. Say again, bro?
They got through.
That's what they did, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah, they got
And that's what we have to do. Because in your growing up, Balagunas, you're talking about you moving. I can call you Balaguna.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As we go through this process, what you're talking about, how deep it is called epigenetics.
Yeah.
It's like it's stamped in you. You know that they taught us to hate each other. Malcolm asked us. Malcolm said, "Who taught you to hate yourself? Who taught you to hate your nose and your lips and your complexion and your head? Who taught you that? Because you didn't do that in Africa. So you must have learned that. Who taught you to hate yourself?" And this is what we're experiencing today. I love our people unconditionally. I don't care where you are in your station of life. You gangbanger, you pimp, prostitute. If you're black and alive in 2021, I got nothing but love and respect for you.
Right.
Because you're a miracle walking. And we just have to, Malcolm also said that, never forget what you were like before you got the information. Don't get sanctimonious with people. Okay? Because you remember what it was like when you was eating that pork. Drinking that liquor.
That's my biggest problem with dudes. It's like once they get a certain amount of information, it's like they start looking down on the dude that was you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and like the stuff I just watch on YouTube and the dudes be beefing about. You know what I'm saying? And the dude will tell you this is that and the third. All right, it's a process, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a process.
Yeah.
When you jump off the porch at 13, 14, and then in America, how long it takes for us to actually mature and to be men with the amount of societal pressures that be on us, it's so we probably don't mature unless we grabbed early and have somebody who has that source of stability for us. We're not gonna mature until our late 20s, early 30s, bro. That's just a fact.
You know, you just brought up a good point that I want to ask our elder. Rites of passage for our young brothers, because as Gutta just laid it out, like a lot of us didn't have that guidance. How important is rites of passage, and what happened to it in our community?
What I call it is rite to pass. And not only that, the reason why we focus on the one that is at puberty, 12 and 13, is because of other cultures that celebrate, for instance, bar mitzvah. Okay? And so we focus on that ceremony, but rite to pass programs, there were rite to pass programs when mommy found out that she was carrying the baby. That was the first rite to pass. Because the human organism now has moved out of the cosmos and has been captured within the body of mother. So there's a welcoming that the community does. And then when the child is born, there's another rite to pass. Not rite of passage, but rite to pass. Which means that you're moving through now. You're moving from mother's body after 10 months into the world. There's a celebration. Then at 2 and 3, we call it terrible twos. No, those are the terrific twos. Because the child asks a question. Why? Okay. Why this? Why that? Why this? And we as parents have to answer those questions because that's the spirit that is asking that question, not the child. Okay, I heard you, mommy and daddy. You've been telling me now for 2-3 years what to do. Now I want to know why. Now, as an adult, sometimes we get very offended. We say, why you ask me? Do as I say, not as I do. No, you answer the question. Because you're not talking to the child, you're talking to the ancestors within the child. You're answering a question. So there's a rite to pass. And if you don't give the child that information, they won't be able to pass because they don't have the proper quality of knowledge and wisdom. There's another one at 7 to 9, which is the age of reasoning. That's where a child moves from a level of just accumulating information to beginning to synthesizing it, comparing it. Okay, mommy, that's not what you said last week, or, that's not what you was doing before, because now the child has watched you in the past, they're watching you now, they're synthesizing, reasoning. They're saying, wait a minute, there's a conflict here. Explain to me why the conflict is there.
Putting it all together.
They're putting it, and this is at the age of 9. 7 to 9 is where this, so there was a rite to pass, because that's another spirit. So instead of mommy and daddy telling me, shut up and you just do as I tell you, you don't ask me no questions. No, you answer the question, because that's not the child that's doing that. It's the ancestors that are talking to you, saying, explain to this child why you just contradicted yourself. Because sometimes in life you have to do that. I teach my children not to lie. But there are times in hell you got to lie.
Yeah. That's right.
And my aunt demands that you understand that balance. Yeah. That's a reality. But you have to have a righteous heart that you're going to do what you do. You're just not going to lie to be lying. And so now we get to the next rite to pass, which is the 12 and 13. And this is where the brothers, elder brothers, take the younger brothers, segregate them out into the fields outside of the community, and elder men teach younger men how to pass into manhood. Because now your reproductive organs are producing the spermatozoa that can bring life into existence. And you got to understand that responsibility. The elder sisters take the younger sisters out and teach them how to conduct themselves as young women, because now you have the ability to go through your monthly cycle. Now you're bringing in life. Bringing in life is the single greatest gift that organisms have been given. The ability to reproduce yourself is a creator-given gift. But here's the key that I'm looking at now in this society, and it's all over this. Men are born with 2 brains, and women are born with 2 brains. Men are born with a brain in their head and a brain in their reproductive organ. Women are born with a brain in their head and a brain in their heart. And the rite to pass during puberty was meant to have like what Dr. Amos Wilson tells us, is a brain transplant. Where the brain, for the young brothers, the brain in the reproductive organ is transplanted into the brain in the head. That way you double conscious. Women take the brain out of their heart and put it in the brain. Because the great majority of mistakes, just think over these past couple of years, even to this very day, think of how many men have given up everything for physical relations. Presidents have given up everything they've ever worked for a little bit of touch.
Right.
Okay? CIA directors. People have risen to highest levels and they've given it all up because they didn't have a brain transplant. And when you don't have a brain transplant, the brain in your reproductive organ is where you think from. You ain't thinking up here, oh, I'm going to give up everything I've ever worked for. I'm president of the United States, but I'm going to give it all up for what we might call a Monica moment. And then you have sisters whose heart allow the men to continue to act like that because they're coming from a heart, which is a beautiful thing, but you have to balance it. Your heart has to think through your brain and not through your heart, because your emotion going to make problems. Then you have another rite to pass at 19, which is going into adulthood. And then you have 65 when you are elder, give or take those years. So to go back, the rite to pass program is actually a spiritual conversation with the ancestors.